Hello, and welcome to Importing Fixed Assets with Asset Import-Export for Microsoft Dynamics GP 2015. Today, I will give you a little background about myself. I will share our main recommendation of what to do prior to using Fixed Asset Import-Export, the benefits, prerequisites, tips and tricks, the import file format, how to use Asset Import-Export, and a demonstration of how Asset Import-Export works. My name is Deborah Sotandio, and I'm a Business Advantage Support Consultant at Rand Group, where we help people use technology for business success. I've been using and helping clients get the most out of Microsoft Dynamics GP for over a year, with the majority of my work focusing on fixed assets. The Business Advantage Support team at Rand Group provides post-deployment support for Microsoft Dynamics GP and NAV. We help clients increase revenue and lower ongoing costs by reducing inefficient processes through more effective use of the software they already own. We help with things like software updates, custom integration, as well as provide technical support and customized training for our clients' staff. Before we get started, I'd like to mention that we highly recommend importing your assets into a test company first. This allows you to take care of any issues you come across during the import and minimizes any potential risks. Please be sure to take a full backup of your production company once you are ready to import the assets into your production database. Importing into a test company and taking a backup of your production company prior to importing into production are both best practices that we like to instill in our clients. Let's start with the benefits of using Asset Import-Export. If you already own Microsoft Dynamics GP, this tool is native functionality. If you own the Fixed Assets module, you already own Asset Import-Export. It is a wonderful alternative to using Integration Manager to import your assets. All you have to do is create the spreadsheet that will be used for the import. With Asset Import-Export, you can insert new assets. Let's say your company just bought another company and the newly acquired company comes with hundreds, if not thousands, of new assets. Instead of manually adding the assets one by one to the module, you can use Asset Import-Export to import them all at once. This eliminates the inefficient process of adding the assets manually and can free up time for your employees to work on other tasks. In addition to inserting new assets, you can update the existing asset information in the Asset General Information card. If your auditors come in and find that they don't think your asset descriptions are descriptive enough, instead of going through each asset and updating them, you can run a smart list to export the asset information, update the descriptions in the spreadsheet, then import them all at once into GP. Lastly, the Asset Import-Export tool has built-in business logic. If you try to add an asset with the new location ID, GP will give you an error because the location ID doesn't exist in the system. This brings me to the next topic I'd like to talk about: prerequisites of using Asset Import-Export. The only prerequisite to using Asset Import-Export is that the Fixed Asset module must be completely set up. All account groups, classes, books, book classes, insurance classes, location IDs, physical location IDs, and structure IDs must exist in the module prior to importing assets. The only optional setup is the custodian IDs. Now that we've discussed the prerequisites, let's go over some tips and tricks inside Microsoft Dynamics GP. First, I'd like to reiterate that it is highly recommended that you import into a test company first. Once you have resolved all issues during the test import and are ready to import into production, please be sure to take a backup of production, then you can import into the production company. Taking a backup will allow you to restore the GP production database in the event that the imports do not go as expected. When importing the assets, import into the Asset General Information card first, then import the book information. Be sure to mark Require Asset Account in the Fixed Assets Company Setup window so that the account numbers can be saved with the asset record. If you want depreciation information to default to the predetermined book class settings, mark the AutoAdBook info checkbox in the Fixed Assets Company Setup window and in the book window. If you only mark one, GP will not auto-add the book information. The last Microsoft Dynamics GP tip is that when you point to the file location to save the created macro, please be sure to add the .mac file extension in the file name. Now for tips and tricks for when you create the spreadsheet used for importing. The file must be a comma-separated file .csv or a text file .txt. The contents of the file must be in a particular order. This order is provided to you in the Microsoft Dynamics GP Help window. If you are updating assets, please be sure that you are updating information into the correct asset. If you import into a field that has existing data and it is not grayed out, GP will overwrite the existing information with the data that you are importing. To ensure accuracy, enter in data in both the original life years and original life days fields. If you want GP to default the life of the asset from the book class setup, do not fill in either of these fields. When importing into the book record, make sure you include the year-to-date depreciation amount if you include the lifetime-to-date depreciation amount. You can only import one asset purchase transaction per asset. If the file contains any commas or single quotes, you must enclose the value in double quotation marks. Try to avoid using dashes or slashes in the date fields. Once you've converted the Excel file, if you're using the text format, please make sure there is a blank last row. The last row of the file is to signify the end of the file. If the last row contains asset information, Dynamics GP will not import the last asset. GP will ignore the header row in your file, but we recommend removing the header row once your file is complete to avoid any potential issues during import. Use a numbering convention that contains leading zeros. This will help with asset sorting as the system sorts by the first character on the left. This allows for expansion as you won't run out of numbers. It also allows you to take advantage of the Auto Generate Next Asset ID setting in the Fixed Asset Company setup. Before you do any importing, create a small sample file with only one or two assets and do a test import with the sample file. This allows you to test the functionality without having to wait until all of your assets have been imported to see the results. We recommend that you break up your asset file into several smaller files. Importing smaller files instead of one large file will assist in troubleshooting any error messages you may come across. You will have an easier time pinpointing the cause of the error. This is what the general Excel file looks like prior to converting it to a comma-separated or text file. Now when you actually put your file together, your headers will all be on one row. I had to break mine up to be able to show you the format in this training. The columns in blue are mandatory columns, and the column in yellow is only mandatory if you are using multi-currency. All of these columns are in a specific order, which you can find in the Help window in Microsoft Dynamics GP. This is what the book Excel file looks like prior to converting it to a comma-separated or text file. Just like with the general file, the columns in blue are mandatory columns. There are two ways to get to Asset Import-Export. The first is by using the top navigation menu. First, you click on Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tools, Utilities, Fixed Assets, and then Asset Import-Export. The other way is by using the side navigation menu. Click on Financial, Utilities, and then under Fixed Assets, click on Asset Import-Export. To use the Asset Import-Export tool, mark Import. Then choose a macro location and don't forget to put .mac at the end of the file name. Mark the Run Macro After Creation checkbox. Select the file import path, and then select the delimiter character. If you are using a text file, please select the delimiter character of tab. If you are using a CSV file, please select the delimiter character of comma. The time it takes to import the assets depends on how many assets you have in your file. The more assets you have, the more time the import will take, but rest assured, the Asset Import-Export tool will take far less time than adding the assets one by one. Let's move on to the demonstrations. In this scenario, I will show you how to run that import without running the macro afterwards. This will create the macro, but it won't actually add the assets to Microsoft Dynamics GP. Running the import without running the macro is useful if you want to take a look at the macro file beforehand. Let's get started. To begin, click on Asset Import-Export. In this window, mark the Import checkbox. Then select the macro location. Give your macro a name. Don't forget to end the file name with .mac. We're going to leave this Run Macro After Creation checkbox unmarked because I want to show you how to run the macro in a different window. Next, enter or select the path name of the file we want to import. Click on this yellow folder and select the file you want to use. I'm using a text file, so I'm going to change the delimiter character from comma to tab. Once you're satisfied with all the settings in this window, click on Continue. Click OK in this window. And when the import is completed, GP will give you another pop-up that says Asset Import Completed. Now we didn't really import the assets, but it's the same process either way. Click OK. Let's take a look at that macro file that we just created. I'm going to go to the path name and open up the file. As you can see, my file is pretty short. I'm only importing a few assets. Once you're done looking at the file, go ahead and close out and open up the general window to import the assets. Click on Tools, Macro, Play, and let's select the macro that we created. As you can see, GP adds these assets one by one. When it's complete, GP will give you a pop-up that lets you know how long the macro ran for. Go ahead and click OK. We're going to go back into the general window to show you that the assets have been added to GP. And here they are, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now in this next scenario, I will show you how to import assets to the general card with the AutoAdBook info setting turned on. This situation is useful when you have a lot of assets, like for example, your company decides to buy new laptops for all of their employees. All of these laptops will inherit the predetermined book class depreciation information. To import these assets, first make sure that AutoAdBook information is turned on in the company settings and in the book settings. First, we'll go to the company settings. This AutoAdBook info is already checked, so we're just going to click OK. And now we're going to go into the book settings. We are only importing into the internal book, so I just want to make sure that the internal book has the AutoAdBook information checked, and it does. Go ahead and close out of this window. Next, open up the Asset Import Export window. I already had it open, so here we want to make sure that this is still marked. We're going to change the macro location because we don't want to write over the original macro that we created in scenario A. So I'm going to call this import3.mac. I'm going to check the Run Macro After Creation checkbox because I want to run the macro after I create it. And I'm going to select the path name of the file that I want to import. I'm still using a text file, so I still want to make sure that this says tab. I'm satisfied with all the information, so I'm going to go ahead and click Continue. Then OK. And as you can see, GP automatically opened the Asset General Information window, and it started adding the assets to the system for me. And that's it. GP went ahead and added all the assets. So let's go ahead and check these assets out. First, we'll go to the General window. And we imported 5, 6, 7, and 8. And now let's go to the Book window. Let's go to 5. And we'll select the internal book. You can tell this asset was added to the internal book because it says ITC/cost in the bottom right-hand corner. If this asset wasn't added to the book, then you would have a different box down here that says distributions, and this ITC/cost wouldn't be here. In scenario C, I will show you how to add assets to the general and book cards. To do this, we will unmark AutoAdBook info checkbox in the company setup. Think back to the example I mentioned earlier. Your company just purchased another company, and you have to import hundreds of new assets into the Dynamics GP system. These assets have been partially depreciated, and you need to add the depreciation information to the module. To import these assets, first we will turn off the AutoAdBook information in the company setup. Scroll down to Setup and click on Company. We're going to uncheck this checkbox right here and click OK. Next, open the Asset Import-Export window. This time I had closed the window before coming back into GP, so we have to recheck this import checkbox. Select the macro location and give your file a name. Click Open. Click Run Macro after creation, and let's select the file that we want to import. Still using a text file, so I want to make sure this says tab. I'm going to go ahead and click on Continue to begin the import. Let me show you what we just did. Here in the General window, you can see these assets, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And if we were to go to the Book window and select one of the new assets and the internal book, you'll see that it says distribution down here, which means that it wasn't actually added to the book yet. So let's go ahead and run a macro to add the assets to the books. We're going to select a new macro location and select our book file. Then click Continue. And now GP will add these assets to the book. Let me show you this. Click on Book, select the asset, we'll select 12, the internal book, and now it says ITC/cost instead of distributions. In this scenario, we will update information for existing assets. What if you're being audited and your auditors don't think that your asset descriptions are descriptive enough? This tool comes in handy because you can mass update the descriptions with Asset Import-Export. Let's say your auditors are looking at these 4 assets, 9 through 12, with the descriptions of office desk, side chair, and big automobile. And the auditors want more information here. To do this, let's close out of these windows, open up Asset Import-Export, select Import. Let's choose a new macro location, give it a new name, click Open, select the Run Macro After Creation checkbox, and select the file that you will be using to import. Change the delimiter character to correspond to the file extension. I'm using text, so this needs to say tab. Then click Continue. So now, instead of saying office desk, Asset 9 now says extra large brown office desk, 10 says black office corner desk, 11 says side chair with armrests, and 12 says big automobile truck F-150. In this last scenario, I will show you how to troubleshoot errors. So let's go ahead and import a file. Mark Import. Let's select new macro location. Click Open, run macro after creation, and let's select the file that we want to import. Change the delimiter character and click Continue. Okay, I'm ready. And oops, we have an error. Let's make note of this number that the error provides, 28, then click OK. And usually GP will give you a more descriptive error after that initial error. In this case, this says, please check and re-enter the date. So it looks like the date is incorrect. Go ahead and click on OK. And if you look at the general card, you'll see that the system stopped the macro on a particular asset. And since the error said that the date was incorrect, you'll see that the acquisition date is blanked out. It says 0. What you want to do is go to the macro that was created and open it up. Remember that number that the error message gave us? Use that number to troubleshoot. Make sure the status bar is visible on the bottom right-hand side and scroll to line 28. The line number that the error message gave you will ballpark the area of the error. In this situation, since the date is wrong, I can look at the date right here. So this is where I am, line 28, and the closest date field is right here. Acquisition date. It says 1/32/2015. Looks like I accidentally mistyped the date. What I'm going to do is correct it. I'm going to close this file, go back to my import file, which is right here, and I'm going to change the date. So this is the erroneous asset date, and I'm going to change this to 31 instead of 32. I'm going to save the file, close it, close the Asset General Information window in GP, discard the changes to continue creating a macro and using the macro to import the assets. And if you left the Asset Import Export window, you can go ahead and click Continue. If you closed it, please open it back up again, select the macro location, and select the file you want to use to import. I'm going to go ahead and click on Continue. And there you go, issue resolved. Assets were added to the system without any errors. And that's how you can use Asset Import Export for Microsoft Dynamics GP to streamline your operations and reduce your ongoing costs. If you are using a third-party application or an Excel spreadsheet to manage your fixed assets and would like to implement fixed assets in Dynamics GP, we can assist with the implementation. We can set up the entire module or assist with processes like determining depreciation information or whether or not you will be integrating fixed assets with purchase order processing, payables management, or the general ledger. Once the module is set up, you can use the Asset Import Export tool to add assets to your Microsoft Dynamics GP company. Please feel free to contact us with the setup portion of the configuration. I hope you enjoyed our training session today. If you would like personalized assistance with fixed assets, one-on-one or team support is available for all of Brain Group's Business Advantage support clients. When considering a new Microsoft partner to work with, you might ask yourself, why RAN Group? Well, here's a couple of reasons why you want to consider working with RAN Group. RAN Group originated in 1996 as part of Hein & Associates. We employ over 100 local professionals to serve our clients, and we have a 90% client retention rate. We have offices located in Houston and Dallas, Texas, and in 2015, RAND Group was named to the Microsoft Dynamics Inner Circle, which is reserved for the top 1% of Microsoft Dynamics partners worldwide. For more information, please email info@randgroup.com to schedule a private consultation or call 1-866-714-8615 to connect with our support team right now. I hope you've enjoyed our training today, and I look forward to working with you soon.